Hi folks, I'm Trey and welcome to one of my coloured pencil tutorials or demonstrations, however you want to say them. I haven't been doing these for a while because I've been so busy sorting out things on my house, and it's really good to be able to get back to these. Now I'm going to be doing a series of videos sharing my experiences of different kinds of pencil. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's a minefield. Going online now and looking at all the different brands of pencils and thinking, oh, should I get those or shouldn't I get those? And it's really hard. I mean, I have done this quite a lot recently, over the last year and a half. I had a wish list of pencils I would like to get, and it's taken me that long to get them. And looking through reviews and trying to find information, and even looking at other YouTube reviews of pencils. Some of that's been helpful, but some of it hasn't been helpful. And the reason being is that some people are saying that some brands of pencils are exactly the same, despite the fact they're different names. Now, I'm not sure about all of that, but some of the pencils I have, they aren't the same pencil brands as something else. And I've actually checked with the companies and they say the same. So I wanted to share my experience of using the pencils that I have, knowing that they aren't the same as other pencils, despite looking similar. And I'm hoping that will help other colourists to choose as well. So in this video, I'm going to be working with a pencil brand called Creativepeak. Now I take all my pencils out of the original tins, so I don't have any of those original tins to show people, but I like to put all mine in cases to keep them safe, and I tend to try and get a different pattern case for each set of pencils so it helps me remember what's in them. This is a real pretty one. It's lovely, very vintage. Now I got the 120 set of Creativepeak, and if you have Castle Art 220, these pencils are very similar to those in colour range, but that is very much the same for all budget pencils, I find. So it's not necessarily the colours that are that different, it's how they go down. That's how I find it, where the differences are. So when it comes to the barrel, now let's have a little look at these here. They have the name of the brand on, and they also have names for the pencils and a number. Now I don't mind them not having a name for the pen, colour name, but I do always use numbers. They're quite a reasonably thick pencil, and I've sharpened a few and they've sharpened great. So I've had no problem so far with breakages, and a nice range of colours. They're really nice. Now this brand here is one of the things, one of the ones that came into another video I saw. They said they are exactly the same as Castle Art, and they aren't. They might look the same, they might have been made in the same factory, but they aren't the same pencil. I did check with Castle Art, and they, got back to me on that one. But also I've used them, and they don't feel the same as the Castle Art. These pencils I find would be a good alternative to Castle Art though, because they are slightly cheaper to buy. So, that's an option for people as well. So that's the case I keep them in. It comes with its own swatch card, which I really like because I do swatches, and it's a bit of a pain starting from scratch. So to have this card and you can do it yourself is brilliant. I really like this, and it's a shame that all pencil companies don't do this. And of course it's got the numbers on and the name, so it's really easy to put these pencils into colour groups. And but I tend to I've kept these ones in number order because most of them are in colour groups, so that's good as well. Now I'm going to be taken out 3 pencils. I'm actually choosing greens because I use green a lot. A light, a medium and a dark green. And I'm going to be testing them with layering and testing them with Zest to blend and baby oil. I go through a lot of paper for testing pencils and when I'm picking the colours. So I wanted a pad that would give me a lot of paper but not be too expensive. And I got this one, a Crawford and Black from a local craft shop. And it was only a few pounds for 150 sheets. It's not very thick paper, but it does have a slight texture. So it's going to be really good for testing such as this, how the layer and doing my blending. This paper does have a slight texture. It's kind of very similar to the Colour in Heaven books I get, but thinner. So that's another reason why I like to try this testing with this paper. Now I'm going to be using 3 pencils. They're all greens. This is the Creativepeak pencils, 052, 058 and 059. So these are a light, a medium and a dark green. Now I tend to always start with the lightest colour. I'm going to, now I work very, very light when it comes to pressure. I do a lot of colouring and I find this is the best way for me to get down the layers that I need to try and get the best depth of colour. And of course if you're doing shading and light source. And you can create and do quite a lot of good stuff with budget pencils. If I'm doing big designs, I find I'm more comfortable using budget pencils because otherwise I'm using up really expensive pencils on big spaces. So that's one layer with the light green. I'm now going to be going in with the medium green. I'll be overlapping part of the light green and again just light pressure. And they've overlapped quite nicely there. Now I'm going to use the dark green. And again I'm going to overlap the medium green slightly and see how this works. Now this is quite a big difference between the medium green. And I wanted to see how that would work. I tend to do this when I'm doing shading anyway. I like a good dark contrast and colour or a good dark colour in the same shades to make for a better effect. So now I'm going to be repeating that. Now this is my second layer, medium, overlapping the sections where I did the dark and overlapping slightly into the light. Light colour. Now the transition between the light and the medium is very subtle. It's nice that. But the transition between the medium and the dark is more obvious. But I don't mind that because like I said, it'll make a more contrasting and interesting effect when you're doing shading. So I'm just building up the layers, on this. Now this has got a slight bit of texture in it and it's filling the texture of the paper quite well, these pencils. I'm going to continue to do layers and see how many I can get down. I'll try and keep a count. I'm on my 4th now. Now to try and fill in the texture a bit more for the paper, you can go the other way, and I do this sometimes, especially with big areas. So I've now changed the direction I'm doing my colouring. Still using very light pressure though. Now that's 5 layers and it's looking quite good, but it's now ready for the first blend. Now I tend to blend midway for my layering and then I can add more onto it. So before I do that though, I'll do another section so I can test which blends the best, the baby oil or the zest. Now I'm going to do a blending demonstration to see how these blend, and I'm using zest first. I use a cotton bud, I just dab it into my sponge which is soaked in zest. Take off the excess so it's not too wet, and then I tend to start from the light towards the dark. So I just do light strokes. Moving towards the medium and then into the dark. Now that's worked quite well, that considering there's only 5 layers and this is textured paper, so that's worked quite well. Now I'm going to do the baby oil. Now I tend to just put a little bit of baby oil in a small egg cup, and again I just dip in cotton bud, just put a little bit on, take off enough so it's not too wet, and again I'll start from the light strokes and go towards the medium and then into the dark. Now that's worked quite nice as well. Now strangely enough, every single pencil brand I've got works differently with zest and baby oil, and some really work great with baby oil and some work best with zest. So I've found it really useful to use both, and I do a lot of blending. So now I'm going to see if I can get another layer down, because I tend to do this. I tend to smooth it off a bit and then go for another layer. So let's see with these greens and with the zest, see if I can get another layer down. Now I'm using the light one first. Again, I'm still using very light pressure. I don't tend to always wait till it dries either before I put another layer down. I mean, you can, but as long as it's not too wet, it's fine. And I've overlapped into the medium. Medium overlapping into the dark. That transition looks more interesting now since I've blended it. And now dark overlapping the medium and then of course going into the dark. Well, it worked okay, and in fact I think I might be able to get another layer down. I'm just going to do that while I'm here. Go on the opposite way of the pencil and see what I can achieve. So this is the second layer after blending. Do the overlap from the medium again for the light and then into the dark. And then the dark over the medium, overlap, and then cover the rest of the dark. Now I've got 2 layers down there. I think actually at this point I will struggle to get any more down, but that's 7 layers and that's not bad, and the colour is quite deep. I would be quite happy with that. These are budget pencils, so you know you're going to take that into account, but you get a good depth of colour. So, and like I said, this is textured paper. So now I'm going to try going over the baby oil again and see what kind of effect I get. Overlapping with the light into the medium. Medium, overlapping the light and going across and overlapping into the dark. And the dark, overlapping the medium and then into the rest of the dark. I'll do another layer, the other way, different direction colouring. Now I'm finding with this brand of pencil, the baby oil is working better than the Zest. It's going down smoother. So that's nice. I'll have to remember that for future colouring, that for these pencils, baby oil is working better. And I think this is down to the manufacturer and what they've decided their mix of oil and wax is. And I find Zest for me works better for more wax, and baby oil works better for more oil. So this must have a higher oil balance in these pencils for the ingredients. So that's the checking done and the testing done for what I use for solution blending. And again, it shows for me, and this is why I'm doing these, that despite the fact they might look like another brand of pencil, they don't work the same as another brand of pencil. And I find for the Castle Art, the Zest works best for those, but for these ones, the baby oil is working better. I've decided also to include a little bit of live colouring using these pencils. I'm going to be working on a design from a Colour in Heaven issue, very special. Now, by this artist, I can't pronounce that name, but I do know she has her own books as well, and the artwork is just stunning. I absolutely love it. So I decided recently to start a fairy design from this, and I wanted to work in festive colours. So I've done the skin in gold using my Marco Refined set of pencils. But now I'm going to be working on the hair, and I'm going to be doing it in reds and pink. Right, so the pencils I'm using, again, just to remind people, it's Creativepeak, and the colours I'm using are Crimson Red, which is the 023, Pale Red 021, and for highlights I'm going to go for a pink, and that's Pale Pink 034, and I'm going to see how these work. So I'm going to work with my pale pink first, because I tend to like to find my highlights for the hair, and for me it's the bits that kind of like bend upwards. So I look for all the sections I think that might be highlighted and the bend upwards. And I'm using a very light pressure. I want to see how many layers I can get down on this paper. This paper isn't as textured as what I did the testing on before, the pad I used, the artist paper. It's not as textured as that. So I don't know how many layers I'll get down, but it'll be interesting to see how it works. So I'm going in, choosing what I think would be highlighted, try and give this hair a bit of motion and the effect of 3D. Now you're probably going to struggle to see that because it's quite a pale pink, but that's generally the way it works out for my first layers. They're very light and I just have to work around the best I can. I'm now using my medium colour, which is the pale red. And I'm going to be going round the highlighted sections. If I think there's anything that needs to be highlighted, as in the pink, I'll put it in. Because I quite often find that I work that out when I'm putting my medium down. You know, there's bits I change my mind and I think, oh, actually, I think that should be lighter. So now I'm just going to be going in and putting in where I feel the medium red should be, but it's actually all round where I've just put my highlights. Now I'm going to be using my darkest red, the crimson red, and going into the areas I feel would be underneath, as I would call it, or the darker sections. This is just planning it by eye, really. It's something that I think most people, if you practice enough colouring, you tend to find your own way to work out how colours come together and layering and such like. So this is not an exact science, but it makes for an interesting effect. Now this isn't an exact kind of way of doing hair, but I find it quite useful, and it will need peaked and touched up and altered, but that tends to happen with all the layers I put down. I mean, I'll try and get at least 5 or 6 layers down before I do any blending, which I don't feel people need to watch. So this is the base layer, and I will be tweaking it as I go along and just altering it slightly, but it's pretty much the way it's going to be where the colours are I've just put down. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back to this and show you how it blends. Now I've put 5 layers down of each of the colours I was using, which was the dark red, the medium red and the pink. And now I'm going to use baby oil to try and blend these Creativepeak pencils on this paper in this magazine. So I'm going to do the light sections first, just light strokes, because the pencils have reacted slightly differently to this paper, which is what I expected because it's not as textured. It's gone down slightly easier. So let's see what happens with the baby oil. Now we're going to use another cotton bud to do the darker colours, the red, medium and dark red, just so I didn't push it too far into the pink, because I want to try and keep my highlights. And it's smoothing out quite nicely. Hopefully you can see this on camera. Now there's some parts that are too narrow really to try and do with the baby oil, because I'm just going to go over the lines into an area I don't want to go. So I'm just going to use a blenderless, colourless pencil, this blends, and just to smooth it out a little bit on the edges. No, that's worked quite nicely, and I'm now going to see if I can get another layer down for each of those colours. I'm going to do the pink first and see if I can get another layer down. Now, if I was to say compare these to Castle Art, they aren't as what I would say is pigmented as those, but they do go down really nice. And for me, I tend to keep my Castle Art pencils for not really big areas, because you know they're one of my favourite brands. I would use these as a good complement to that set, because I have the 120 in the Castle Art as well, and the colours match quite nicely. So it's a good set, this, I think, these Creativepeak, for big areas. Saying that though, they keep the points well. They are harder, I find, core-wise. So you can get into areas, small areas, and they don't blunt too much. So I kind of like that as well. Fine detail. I'm finding this set really handy for that. Now I'm going to do the darker red sections. Put another layer down for that, and then I'll go over all the darker sections and the medium red sections with the medium red, just to blend it in a little bit better. I've had these pencils probably about a month, and I've already used them quite a bit. I do a lot of colouring. I spend 2 or 3 hours a day colouring, so I go through a lot of pencil, and being able to find a really useful, nice budget grey pencil is pretty much essential for me, and I'm getting some nice effects with these, so I'm really pleased with them, and I think they've been a good buy. Definitely a good purchase. I'm really pleased how that's worked. I've managed to get one layer down on top of the baby oil with these pencils. I'm pretty sure I'll probably get another 2 layers down on top of that, but which I'll probably do before I finish this project, but I'm not going to do that on camera. It's just to give an idea to people about what you can do with these pencils and what you can achieve. My thoughts, I think they're a good buy, a good budget pencil. They're harder than some others I've got, but the pigment isn't too bad, and I can get them down quite well on the paper. I've used them on textured paper, and this one is slightly smoother, and they've worked fine with both. The I hope the testing I've done and the examples I've done using these pencils have been useful for people. So if you're thinking of getting them, it might help you decide if you want to try them. And I'll say bye for now, and I'll come back with another video demonstration of how pencils work in the near future.